Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's Tuesday, December 29th, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reports 1,046 new cases of COVID-19 Tuesday. The country reported a whopping 40 deaths, marking an all-time high. As part of efforts to curb the spread of new strains of COVID-19, the WHO says it's important to step up genome sequencing worldwide in order to ensure that the new variants are detected. And South Korean courts will proceed with the liquidation of assets of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, beginning with an appraisal of the firm's local assets as legal documents issued by Seoul Supreme Court for public notification bring the ruling into effect from Tuesday. We begin with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea. The country reported 1,046 new cases Tuesday, soaring back up over the 1,000 mark. Of the new cases, 1,030 were locally transmitted, most in the greater capital area, and 16 were from overseas. There have been a record-breaking 40 more deaths, raising the death toll to 859. The total number of infected surpassed the 58,700 mark. The surge comes as cluster infections continue, especially in crowded places, including correction facilities. During a meeting earlier, Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun announced extending the operation of temporary screening test centers for 2 more weeks to curb the spread. U.S. Forces Korea is set to start administering COVID-19 vaccines to frontline healthcare workers. A USFK official told the American Forces Network that inoculations will start at U.S. bases in Osan, Gunsan, and Pyeongtaek on Tuesday. Service members can decide themselves on whether they want to take the vaccine. South Korean service members affiliated with the U.S. Army will also be able to get the shot if they want to. While the South Korean government has put in place tougher quarantine measures to stem the spread of COVID-19, users of public transport remain exposed to confined, crowded, and close contact environments, and many are naturally concerned. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more.
This is what Seoul's subway looks like at 8 o'clock in the morning. Despite the continued social distancing level 2.5 amid the rise in COVID-19 cases, subway cars are still crammed during rush hour.
I thought I left home earlier than usual, but I guess it's still very crowded since many people are doing the same.
Keeping a healthy distance inside the subway cars that are generally poorly ventilated is practically impossible. This is the confined, crowded, and close contact environment which the South Korean government has repeatedly urged the public to avoid.
Aside from the inconvenience of wearing masks, I'm always concerned about the possibility of getting infected on the train.
While the government has urged corporations to adopt work-from-home schemes, many are still physically commuting to their offices on crowded subways.
Working from home is not an option for me. I'm especially worried on my way home as it's extremely crowded at around 6 p.m. So I try to face toward an empty area inside the train.
This is especially worrisome as COVID-19 cases with unknown sources of infection account for nearly 30% of the country's total cases. Experts say it's highly likely the virus could have spread via public transit, especially through buttons and handles that are frequently touched by numerous people.
The government needs to press companies to allow their employees to work from home.
As public transit workers, bus drivers, and those working at subway stations have tested positive for the virus, there are mounting concerns over possible transmissions. To this end, the city of Seoul plans to test all public transit employees in the near future. Nevertheless, many point out that the South Korean government needs to take a more fundamental approach by proactively demanding firms adopt flexible working hours or work-from-home schemes. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's consumer sentiment dipped sharply in December due to the third wave of COVID-19 infections across the country. According to the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the composite consumer sentiment index was at 89.8, down 8.1 points on month. The BOK attributed the fall to strict social distancing measures imposed to contain the spread. This month's reading remains below the 100 threshold, meaning people are still more pessimistic than optimistic about the economy. As part of attempts to boost consumption, those who order food 4 times using delivery apps can get a refund of 10,000 won, or around $9. Starting 10 a.m. today, customers who make 4 card payments of at least 20,000 won, or $18 through a food delivery app can apply for the refund, which comes in the form of cashback or discounts on their credit card bill. 7 designated delivery apps, including 배달민족, Yogiyo, and Coupang Eats, are part of the campaign, with 4 more to be added. The campaign aims to boost consumption and help out the restaurant industry suffering amid the COVID-19 pandemic. More information is available on the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs website. The WHO says it's important to step up genome sequencing worldwide in order to ensure that the new variants of COVID-19 are detected. New strains discovered in Britain and South Africa appear to be more infectious, prompting new travel restrictions around the world. Our Lee Seung-jae has more details.
Speaking at an online news conference in Geneva on Monday, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus cited the new variants of COVID-19 discovered in the UK and South Africa and called on scientists to better understand any and all changes to the virus and their impact. He also stressed the importance of increasing genomic sequencing capacity worldwide and the need to share information with his agency and other countries. The variant has been responsible for a massive surge in COVID-19 cases in the UK. The country reported a record 41,385 new cases and 357 deaths on Monday alone. Britain's National Health Service says the number of people currently being treated at hospitals has surpassed 20,000, higher than the previous peak of 19,000 in April. Finland has joined at least a dozen other nations in confirming a case of the variant out of the UK. However, in addition to that, Helsinki also reported that 2 people also tested positive for the second variant out of South Africa. Finland imposed travel restrictions on passengers from Britain earlier this month. While the U.S. has yet to report any cases of the new variants, U.S. health officials say it must be taken very seriously. This includes Washington's top infectious disease expert, Anthony Fauci, who endorsed the decision of U.S. officials to require negative COVID-19 tests before letting people from Britain enter the U.S. Russia has extended the suspension of air traffic with the UK until January 12th. The country's virus task force says the decision was made to ensure the protection of public health. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
China has officially begun its vaccination program against COVID-19, aiming to inoculate 50 million people ahead of the Spring Festival in February. Among the first to get shots are those working in cold chain logistics companies and customs quarantine departments. Our Choi Min-jung has the details.
China officially began vaccinating its population this month against the COVID-19 virus. According to the Global Times, China aims to cover 50 million people from its first priority group by February next year, including frontline medical workers and those working with cold chain products, as well as customs quarantine. The Chinese government had previously announced plans to distribute 100 million doses of the 2-step vaccines produced by the country's pharmaceutical companies Sinopharm and Sinovac. However, the report did not specify which vaccines were distributed for use. Henan province was the first of a number of regions to start inoculations on December 23rd, with 50 cold chain workers among the first to receive shots.
I'm frequently exposed to imported goods. I was worried about my safety before this vaccination, and I feel much assured after the vaccination.
Guangdong province is also well underway with its vaccination program. According to the director of the Provincial Health Commission on Wednesday, some 180,000 people, including workers from the cold chain industry and ports, were inoculated as of December 22nd. The director also made it clear that not everyone could receive the shot.
People who are under 18 or above 59 years old should not get COVID-19 vaccination. people who were seriously allergic to vaccines in the past, who are pregnant, and people who have acute or serious chronic diseases or suffering acute phases of chronic diseases should not get COVID-19 vaccination.
With most regions in China aiming to finish vaccinating the key priority groups by February next year, it seems that the general public will have to wait until after the Lunar New Year. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The House of Representatives voted on Monday to override U.S. President Donald Trump's veto of the National Defense Authorization Act. With more than two-thirds of the votes needed, the House approved overriding Trump's veto of the defense bill worth over $740 billion. This is expected to be the first veto override of Trump's presidency if the Senate follows suit in the following days. The multi-billion-dollar defense bill had initially been passed by both the Senate and House of Representatives prior to Trump's veto. South Korean courts can now deliver orders to liquidate the assets of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, the Japanese company that ignored a 2018 Supreme Court ruling to compensate the Korean victims of wartime forced labor. This comes as legal documents issued by the court for public notification bring the ruling into effect from Tuesday. The courts will proceed with the liquidation beginning with an appraisal of the firm's local assets. In November 2018, South Korea's Supreme Court ordered Mitsubishi Heavy Industries to pay 5 victims of wartime forced labor $90,000 to $130,000 each in compensation. 10 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists face a closed-door trial for illegally crossing the border. They could face up to 7 years in prison, with one who is charged under a national security law facing the possibility of a life sentence. Our Lee Kyung-eun has this report.
10 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists appear in a Chinese court in Shenzhen on Monday for the first day of their secret trial. They're accused of an illegal border crossing as they're allegedly fleeing to Taiwan for political refuge. The fugitives are among the 12 activists who had all faced charges over anti-government protests. Since they were detained in August, they have been allowed virtually no contact with the outside world. Monday's trial was also held behind closed doors, prompting the families of the activists to plead for transparency.
I really want to see my son very much. If you do not give him a sentence, I cannot see him. If you give him a sentence, then I can go see him. All I want is just to see his face once.
In Hong Kong, protesters gathered outside of China's liaison office, calling for their release after the U.S. Embassy in China made the same request to Beijing. China immediately criticized Washington, saying it disregarded facts and violated China's sovereignty.
China urges the US to abide by international law and immediately stop interfering in Hong Kong affairs and China's internal affairs and meddling in China's judicial sovereignty.
Among the detained are 2 minors, whom Chinese officials said will be given a separate hearing. One of the detainees is facing charges under the national security law, which could result in a life sentence in prison. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Good morning. It was very mild for the end of December yesterday, but we'll need to brace for a big drop in the readings today. Temperatures will only rise to highs of 3 degrees Celsius in Seoul this afternoon, along with freezing winds and a wintry mix of sleet and snow. So eastern parts of the country and mountainous regions of Jeju will see 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall, while spotty rain is in store for the mainland. Wintry precipitation will clear the dust from the air, but colder air will then blow into the country. Highs will be 2 to 8 degrees lower today in most parts, but rain and snow will not freeze on the roads. Meanwhile, Busan and Jeju will be relatively milder, topping out at 15 degrees this afternoon. Then from tomorrow, brace for a real biting chill. Lows will dip down to minus 12 degrees Celsius here in Seoul, and it's going to be bone-chillingly cold through the New Year's holiday weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
No place is safe from COVID-19 these days.